Welcome to the Grappling Rewind Podcast.
Welcome to this week on the Grappling Rewind Podcast. In this week's show, we're going to recap BJJ Bet 2, Who's Next? We're going to recap Fight to Win 179. We're going to preview Emerald City Invitational 2, Fight to Win 180, and Polaris Squads 3. As always in the show, I'm your host, Maine, my co-host.
Zach.
Hey, doing Zach?
Good.
We got some fun matches.
Yeah, really good judges. BJJ Bet always puts on a good show, and it did not disappoint this time around.
It was fun,
yeah.
And we have a lot to talk about for that.
Yeah, we do.
As far as news goes this week, we now know, back into not gym drama, but we now know that there is going to be allegedly a B team for the Danaher Death Squad breakup.
Not allegedly. They posted that as the real name of their team, I think.
And then the other team is New Wave.
Yeah.
And everyone went, that's a name you could choose.
Yeah. B team's a way more exciting
B team's
name.
hilarious because it looks like they're playing off the A team thing.
Yeah.
And because they posted the screenshot, the image of the valley of the trees, and I went, that'll be fun. Those guys seem like they would be fun to train with.
Yeah, I think I would enjoy training with them.
The environment would seem like it would be fun.
Yeah.
So I think they're maybe both in Austin. No one knows yet, but it seems like it is a legit thing. We talked about last week with the Danaher Death Squad breakup. That's more news. Other than that,
I don't know. Not a lot else going on this week.
Not a terrible week. I'm just pretty low key week for news. After last week, I'm not against that. I'm actually pretty happy to have.
We got a
lot
more to talk about this week. A lot more matches that were.
Yeah, we got some fun stuff to talk about. So I think we kind of killed the news segment. I have nothing else to talk about for news. Do you have anything else?
Nope, that's it.
We got promotions this weekend at the gym for some folks. That's exciting for us.
Not for the listener.
Not for the listeners now. So made me laugh, Zach. So let's move on to our recap of BJJ Bet 2, Who's Next? Always weird to have an interrogative in your title name with no question mark.
Okay, we're talking about English. They speak Portuguese, Maine, as a first language. Let's not get too critical of the grammar.
They do. So where do you want to start with this match? I know where I don't want to start. So let's start with
top.
Let's start with the GP.
Yeah. Start with the GP. Start with the winner. Start with the most exciting match, which was Hulk versus Lo, I think.
You want to start with the winner?
Yeah, let's start with the winner and work our way back.
That's a weird way to do that.
Why is that a weird way? I mean,
because we're 200 episodes in. We've never done that before.
I figure people want to hear about the finals match. Start there and then work back. We can start with the.
Let's start with the finals match then. Let's switch it up, Zach.
Start at the end.
Start with the finals match, of course, where you usually start for recaps.
All right. Well,
so we had Leandro Lo getting defeated by Hulk via brain damage.
Yeah,
a little bit.
Man, he got put down. So this match was really cool. Hulk looked incredible all day long. And in particular in this match, dude comes out walking like a fucking caveman. Just arms down, standing straight up, chest forward at Lo, just rushing at him.
I'm ready to win again.
Cause explosions going off behind him style walking forward. Did not give a shit what was coming at him, was just walking forward. It was really cool. And then after about 5 to 10 seconds of that, he smashes his face into the center of Lo's chest and hits a blast double on him that goes off the mat, but fuck did it set the tone for the match.
Yeah, and that was, for me, immediately I went, okay, well, Hulk has a point to prove or something.
Shit, did he ever.
Or it's like Leandro's had a couple matches at this point, you're not going to knock the ring rust off of him, he's good to go now, and then immediately, and that's one thing I like about Hulk, is that he'll put his head, there's a lot of the guys at the upper levels of no-gi competition have enough wrestling and they have that head in the chest blast double, and then Mourinho's another guy I think of a lot that does this. Just goes down when push comes to shove, he can just put his head in the middle of your chest and blast you off the stage.
Yeah, I think the one that comes to mind most for me about over it is Cyborg. I think there's so many clips of him doing this exact blast double, and he was doing it a little bit before some other people, I think. But
he could wrestle before it was super important.
Yeah,
which is why he was ADCC champ.
The thing with this version of the blast double is not that it does. I mean, it's a technical takedown. But it is also the kind of takedown that you can get away with, that if you just get good at doing that thing and are bigger, stronger, faster than your opponent, you're gonna hit it. And so we see it from a lot of guys that are bigger, stronger, faster than their opponents.
Yeah, the guy named Hulk.
Yeah, right. Yeah. The guy named Hulk. Cyborg, who's an absolute fucking animal.
Named Cyborg.
Nicky Rod does this, right? And Nicky Rod has some good wrestling outside of this, but also he's often bigger, stronger, faster than his opponent.
Almost always faster.
It's a great way to get a person down and take advantage of your skill set. So I think it's a smart move for Hulk to be. He's hit this for a long time now, but I've seen him hitting it cleaner and more aggressively in the past couple fights that he's had.
Yeah, in the past 6 months, he's really like, it seems to be something that he goes to more often, and maybe he's gained more confidence with that. Somebody can probably point to like a clip from like 5 years ago of him doing it, but like it seems something that we're seeing him doing more frequently now, and sets the tone immediately in this match with Leandro.
He sets the tone immediately, and then something that he's been doing more with it, at least from my recollection that he's been doing more with it lately, which I really, really like for this particular blast double, he does it later. So, okay. That goes off the edge of the mat, the first takedown, and then Lo and Hulk get recentered. They do a little bit of like grip fighting, hand fighting kind of stuff for quite a while. It was 2-3 minutes or so.
Something like that.
And then Lo attempts the same sort of face-in blast double, and it doesn't go as well for Lo. It gets stuffed. And then right off of that, Hulk hits this really incredible go-behind. And he's not able to get Lo all the way down to the mat, but he clearly gets behind him and gets the body lock from behind and is keeping his hips back, which makes it really hard for Lo to do like
He's super extended, too. Like, he's looking almost for Leandro to like roll through and counter off with a roll through, or he's looking for Leandro to like try to spin through and catch the legs as he goes.
If you stay tight with that go behind, then you can sit escape. Yeah. Lo could sit escape. If you keep your hips back like that, the sit escape doesn't work because you can sort of lever your own hips with theirs, and as they start to drop their hips down, it doesn't do them any good, and then you can suck them back down into the mat and then move into side control or something like that. So I think honestly, it's a really nice way to take away your opponent's defenses by staying so hinged like Hulk was. But eventually, Lo does go for that rolling knee bar.
Yeah.
And it was not, I don't think it was a great choice, but Lo didn't have a ton of choices, and so maybe it was the best choice that he could have made at that time. Who am I to say? But it didn't go well for him.
It did not, to put it lightly, no, it did not go well for him.
It did, however, get him out of the body lock. So he gets out, and then as soon as he turns around, Hulk hits that same blast double again. And this is where I think the progression for Hulk's version of this takedown has come in. He's hitting it off of scrambles at the end of the scrambles pretty often. And it's a great way to get quick takedowns when people are off balance and unsure what's happening.
And one thing that Hulk does really well is Hulk has really, really good like centering of base. Over with how he hits it. You saw. Well, look at it. There's a really famous GIF of him stuffing Patrick Gaudio's takedown at ADCC, where he just steps in and times it perfectly and just basically doesn't move at all and just like throws him off essentially midway through. And that was something that kicked it off to watch for that in other matches I've seen Hulk in. He's just very, very good at like keeping a really strong base and then driving forward with like his chest, shoulders, and hips all kind of at the same time. And it's just something I've noticed Hulk do more frequently, having seen that GIF.
Yeah. He's incredible at doing those kinds of things, and he ends up getting this takedown off of that blast double that sort of came out of chaos.
And he slams Leandro down.
Slams the hell out of him.
He's a little bit to the side, and he hits it. He locks him out. And then, like, Leandro doesn't really have the ability to, like, post on a shoulder, or not post on a shoulder, but like, land on a shoulder. And he kind of, like, lands him on the side and, like, back corner of his head. And then you see Leandro very, like, kind of go, that sucked. I'm gonna take a second here. And Hulk goes, cool, we're still going.
You're not gonna take a second. And Hulk's able to get a single hook in off of that. And I don't think the slam was anything. I mean, it might have been intentional in terms of what is legal, but it wasn't out of bounds or anything ridiculous. No, I mean, it was just a good takedown that hit hard.
At the professional level, I don't have any problem with this takedown at the professional level.
At all.
It was hard. Do I want to take like this? Absolutely not. But I didn't really have a problem with the take. It was fine. It was just like Leandro landed on his head. It's unfortunate, but that definitely seemed like it changed immediately because Leandro
looked a little shook.
He looked a lot shook.
He looked like he had gotten not knocked out, but at like
rattled.
His bell rung. And in that time, Hulk climbed up, got one hook in, got the choke arm in. Then got the choke arm in, then bothered to get the other hook in later, which he did earlier in the GP as well.
Yeah.
He did that 3 times in the GP with all 3 of his opponents, which I thought was an interesting thing. Like, we've talked about this on the show before, that the second hook is important for points. It's often important for control. But if you can get the choke locked in beforehand, sometimes they have no choice but to give you the hook because they have to defend the choke, and then you get the hook really easy.
Yeah,
and
then
the hands are now you
way.
have the control that you need to finish.
Right.
And that's what happened here. Lo couldn't defend the first hook, I think, probably because he was a little wrong.
The first hook went in quick, and Lo, there was not a huge amount of defense immediately at that hook. Lo wasn't angling off. He wasn't really getting his hands immediately there and pushing away. Like, the kind of fervent fighting we usually see from Leandro in those positions.
Yeah.
It was markedly slower
Yeah.
after that takedown exchange.
And then Hulk's able to get the choke in and finishes Lo with the rear naked from that whole sequence. It was a really, really good finish and a nice end to a great run from Hulk.
And it made me laugh because, see, we're doing this out of order. I can't like talk about the whole mark of the event.
Yeah.
Hulk has a bunch of subs, has a couple subs throughout this event, and Gordon was just talking that shit on the last event at Who's Number One. Like, yeah, Hulk doesn't finish a lot of guys. And I went, interesting. Hulk finished the following, 2 weekends later.
Something to prove.
Finished, and I was curious because Gordon and Hulk go back and forth not infrequently on all the social medias and in person. Like, they don't particularly care for each other.
Yeah.
And I thought it was very interesting that Hulk came out with the burners on and submitted some guys, and especially like guys like Leandro Lo and like Paganini. Like, it was an impressive run through with submissions. And we Hulk can submit guys, but I just thought it was very funny in contrast, and I was curious if it was like somewhat related or not. I could be reaching completely, which is very possible. Where do you want to go next?
So, quick note, Lo versus Tackett was the semifinal match that we can't really talk about much because Tackett was hurt coming into the whole event.
Tackett had a rib injury a couple of weeks and hadn't trained for like 2 weeks leading into the event, and thought he could still do it. He wins his first match versus Rousimar Palhares. We'll talk about that in a second. And then the second match versus Lo, he like pulls guard like really quickly and kind of weird, and then he starts like leg pummeling to stop Lo from passing, and then Lo starts to put pressure on him, and he kind of just goes, no, and he kind of they look around like, what's going on? And he's like, I'm dying. Yeah. And if you know how tough Tackett is, you're like, oh, he's really injured, and he just had to fight really Rousimar, so that sucks. I hope that he is going to heal up quickly. Unfortunately, he is also, I think he's probably out of Polaris now because he's supposed to be on Team Team USA. On Polaris, so I assume you can't.
A rib injury like that takes time to heal, and I doubt that
you've had
back in time.
Bad ribs before, right?
I've had all the injuries.
Yeah, dude, rib injuries are like, I mean, they're not back injuries, but they're still like
the cartilage ones are tough.
Yeah,
they take a long time to heal.
I have a video of me tearing my ribs out in a competition.
Sounds terrible.
It's hilarious because I make a dumb face on the takedown. You see me go, and then I'm like, well, that's where it happened.
So not much to talk about there. Tackett loses by verbal submission to his own rib injury.
Yeah, very quickly.
Yeah.
Lucas Hulk Barbosa versus Mauricio Oliveira.
Yep.
The finish here was lightning quick. And
man.
We've seen Hulk finish like this, and finishes a topside head and arm triangle from the mount that he turns over to the side and just hips out to it. We've seen Hulk finish this a bunch, and every time he finishes it, I am always astonished. I think we saw him finish it in the last 2 months. I think maybe on a Fight to Win or something like that.
I can't remember.
Whenever he sits out, he must have some absurd squeeze or technique or positioning of his body, because people tap
so fast,
so quickly. And Mauricio Oliveira again tapped super quickly here too. Immediately as Hulk came off, he was like, "No, I'm done."
Yeah.
And there's something I wish we had the other angle of where Hulk's head and other arm was positioned, because I could only see the backside of him.
Might be worth going back and finding where he had an arm triangles people and just trying to get a good look at him from a bunch of different angles.
Because he finishes, he is so quick at that finish, and most people will kind of eat that and burn for a little bit there, and before they kind of go, oh, I can't take it anymore. Hulk finishes quick.
Yeah. But rewinding a little bit there, I was actually really impressed with Oliveira here at the beginning of the match, because he pulls guard, and I don't think that he was ever necessarily in charge of the match, but he was definitely setting the momentum early. He set up a almost perfect reverse De La Riva sweep, and Hulk we were talking about it earlier, Hulk just has an incredible way to maintain his base, and Hulk posts with his hand and turns his hips in a little bit and then spreads his legs scissored out wide and is able to just halt the progression of this sweep midway through, which was really, really impressive from him.
It was just an athletic feat.
It was an athletic feat.
And I went, Now, it's one of those things I occasionally see on pro matches, and a lot of times actually, you see somebody do something, you're like, that's something that you couldn't teach your normal practice. You just have to be able to do that in the moment, technically and athletically. And I can't teach anyone how to do that. They just have to just have to know how to do that. And it's always super refreshing to see that kind of stuff.
Yeah, and he certainly pulled it off. But I mean, even outside of that, Oliveira's his attacks were really nice throughout the first 5 minutes or so of the match.
It was steady.
So
and
they were steady, consistent. He was setting up sweeps really nicely. Hulk was defending them because he was really good. But as far as I was looking at it, the momentum of the match was being set by Oliveira for the first half of the match. And then something happened, which we see out of Hulk every once in a while. Hulk had been attempting to pass from headquarters the entire match. That was his strategy going into this match. He was passing from headquarters, and
which headquarters are like that low kind of squatted position where you're either feet on the hands, feet on the knees, feet on the
sort
shins.
Sort of halfway into a knee slice pass, but not there all the way yet.
Where you can either throw through the knee slide or throw over to mount even, or you can like throw by and like do a long step pass or any sort of like outward passing if somebody overcommits their hips either way with like a Torganda or something.
Yep. And so Hulk's been headquarters passing the entire match, and Oliveira's doing a really nice job dealing with it, doing a nice job transitioning to and from various guards and keeping Hulk off balance and starting to set up sweeps. And if that continued for another 5 minutes, I think Oliveira would have been able to hit the sweep at the very least, gotten some points, and could have pulled off the win on the match. But I actually have it in my notes, at 4:40 in the match, you can see Hulk decide it is no longer beneficial to headquarters pass, and he completely switches his strategy on top to pressure passing. And from that point forward, he is in complete control of the match and absolutely dominates everything from that point forward.
The shift was crazy because he starts racking up points and he like passes, he goes through, and like he just, like you said, he just made a decision like, oh, that wasn't working. I'm going to do something different.
And that kind of game change is the type of thing that you see from people that are incredibly good at the sport. I mean, we know he's incredibly good at the sport, but
can't make that switch and like have it work. And that's, for me, was the most impressive piece is like the guys that are most successful in the sport typically are the ones that can stick to a game plan almost to a fault, especially at the lower weight class. Like just stick, like this is my plan, this is what I do, this is where I'm going. And kind of one of the ways I appreciate Hulk is that he's one of those guys like, oh, that's not working. And he'll like immediately shift like, not even like a game plan, because like passing it, you're supposed to pass there, but how he's doing it. And
I think that's a game plan, right? Like his strategy for the match was completely shifted midway through.
Shifts from like the headquarters to that like really, really heavy like monster pressure passing.
Body lock passing and crossface passing and staying heavy on the shoulders, keeping Oliveira's back or hips flat to the mat. It was a completely different style.
He just took control of the match in a way that like we see very few people do. Like the momentum shifted and swung in that first passing sequence immediately to Hulk, and then it was Hulk's show until the finish, and Oliveira was never able to get anything back going again. And I was just extremely impressed with like that one shift of like, this is not working. Okay, I can go to this other facet of my game that will most likely work in this scenario.
And also picking out, like we've seen Hulk pass in a number of different ways. He's extremely good at changing up the way that he passes, and oftentimes, especially in the gi, we'll see him flip back and forth between heavy pressure passing and standing passing, like mobility style passing. We'll see him make those shifts back and forth in one sequence. It's a little less common to do that in no-gi because
you just don't have the grips and like the friction.
Harder to stand up out of a pressure pass in the gi without getting caught up in a leg entanglement. So we don't see it there as much, but we know that he's good at passing in a number of different ways, and it's into like the intuition that it takes to realize that your current strategy is not working. The thing that you thought was going to work isn't working. It's hard to realize that in the middle of a match. And then B, to pick out of the numerous ways that you could go about passing to say, this is the one that's going to work here, and then it actually worked.
I also appreciate that he like actually made a change in the match as opposed to, I'm just going to try to win this via like, I'm just going to keep doing this for the rest. Because we see that a lot in the sport where guys, we saw this in another match, super fight in the card, where it's like, this is the thing I'm doing. This is the whole match.
I think we saw this in a number of places. Actually, I'll bring it up again in a minute, but I think this is why Micael Galvao lost his match.
Let's move on to that match then. In the first match with Oliveira takes on Micael Galvao and is able to beat Micael Galvao via 2 points.
I think they were takedown points technically. It was a weird exchange that Oliveira got the points on. And so they both came out very aggressive. But there were no points in the first exchange. I think Galvao pulled guard, or Oliveira pulled guard first, and then they ended up back on their feet. And then there's a moment where Galvao pulls guard and Oliveira sort of feedles. Like he brings his knees to his chest, like jumps in the air, brings his knees to his chest. And like in the process, Galvao can't get his legs around Oliveira. And then Oliveira leans forward and takes top position and immediately starts passing off of it. It was a really nice exchange. He immediately started passing off of it. And then Galvao gets back to the guard and starts playing open guard. And then 2 points were awarded. And so I was not
that's
super
the 2 points?
clear. It was when they were awarded.
Oh, okay. Because I thought it was because the 2 points took forever to be awarded, and commentary called it out, and it was on the initial. It was on the other sequence.
Oh, okay. I was really confused about it because of when they were awarded. Okay.
I think it was either they moved a lot.
Yeah.
The previous sequence was scoring.
Okay.
And it was a very
so sweep or something like that in the previous sequence.
It was like, ooh, that was close, but
scored.
like,
okay.
Which is partially why I think it took so long to do it, because commentators like, oh, that could be points, and then they were like, oh, it wasn't points, and then you saw I actually rewound it and saw the ref in the middle give 2, but his hand was kind of off the screen. And then they later, during that sequence, awarded the points. So I think that's where some of the confusion was.
Okay, so it wasn't a takedown situation. It was something in the previous sequence.
It was something in the previous sequence.
That makes more sense than what I thought was happening.
It was a squirrely sequence in the previous sequence.
Yeah. But that's what that squirreliness is actually what I was referring to in this. And so Micael Galvao is, at this point, we're getting to know him very well as an aggressive submission attacker. He aggressively moves forward. But what we saw Oliveira doing with Hulk was stopping that, right? Hulk was aggressively moving forward. He was trying this very particular pass sequence, and it didn't work for Hulk even, and it wasn't working for Micah. The difference in these two matches was that Hulk was able to recognize, okay, this sort of space that comes with trying to move quickly and use my athleticism against this person isn't working for me. And so he shifted to a slower, more grindy approach to the match, whereas Micael Galvao was not able to do that, and he didn't do that. And I don't think we've ever seen him do something like that before.
The other thing that I picked up on this match was Galvao, for the entirety of the match, is looking to finish with the arm bars and the triangles and like the entries, and he's looking to go for the legs, and he's going under, and he's going for ankles.
He tried a sweep or two a couple times too.
He did. He was trying a variety of things, but he was doing the thing I like most about Micael Galvao, and a lot for like what we like Cisneros for.
Yep.
Consistently trying to win, and this match, the match with Micael Galvao and Mauricio Oliveira, had big parallels to the Jonta Alves match that he also lost at EUG a month or two ago. In a similar scenario where it's like you have a veteran, they can get some points on the board, and then can defend really well and stay in the driver's seat enough that even with all the stuff you're throwing at, if he can stop you from scoring, Micael Galvao is kind of split between working really hard to submit you and then opportunistically looking to take positions to advance on you. In the Alves match and in this match, you saw two veterans go, okay, I've scored. I can now just work on defending these. And then in defending this, I can defend both the sweeps and the pass. I never really have to overcommit to score additional points. And the parallel in the match was very, very interesting. I was like, are we going to see another Alves match where this happens? And to Oliveira's credit, he's able to stave off a couple kind of deeper attempts from Micael Galvao for sweeps and for submission attempts.
He protected the lead that he got, and it was an impressive display from Oliveira, especially against someone that we're looking at as a very like premier blue chip up and comer.
Oh yeah.
It'll be interesting to see. I always like when we look at these.
I mean, messed up mine. I picked Galvao to beat Oliveira. So.
Yeah, I did too. But I'm always interested to see in these sort of like blue chip young guys how their game is going to progress, and picking out the places where it looks like if they adjusted this thing or figured this bit out, they would be incredibly dominant. And I'm thinking more and more lately for Galvao, it's going to be this type of strategy shift.
And I'm very curious, being at Fight Sports with Cyborg and like that whole room with Daria.
And Cyborg's incredible at this thing too,
and that's what I'm curious
so
about.
Good at changing up the pace when he needs to.
Good coach for those things, and I'm curious to see, because there's a ton of training footage of these two guys training together, what he picks up from Cyborg and like the direction it takes his game, because Cyborg's game is very, very different than Micael Galvao's game, which is why he's able to compete into his 40s or like 38, whatever Cyborg is, and be as successful as he is. Dude had the best 2020. At 38 or 40. I always forget how old he is.
I think he's 40 now.
I'm very curious to see what Galvao will pick up at that camp to fix these sort of, I don't want to call them tactical errors, but like...
It's just a place where he can improve. I wouldn't call it a tactical error either, right? No. It's not,
I want to keep doing what he's doing because it's awesome to watch. But he has dropped, we've now seen him drop 2 matches to savvy veterans that can score and then not stall, but not get killed by Galvao's like crazy submission attempts.
Yeah. And I think, like you said, Fight Sports is a great place for him to do that. You watch Cyborg and Wagner in particular come to mind as people that can Dorino, that can be extremely explosive, but settle when they need to. And I think that settle when they need to is a really hard thing to learn, especially for people that are incredibly athletic. And
young black belt, a brand new black belt who's like I'm just burning through everyone.
Gifted and athletic. Yeah. It's hard to learn when to relax, but I think with those three guys in particular, but also a number of other people down there at Fight Sports, I think if he's going to learn it from anyone, it's those guys. And I can't wait to see what happens when he starts adding in those sort of like pace shifts, strategy shifts into his game a little bit more, because he's going to be...
It's going to be fun.
He's already a force.
I'm excited for it.
Yeah.
So next match, we had Hulk defeating Servio Tullio 4-0. Hulk scoring, getting points. Protecting a lead.
This one was interesting because we saw a double guard pull in the beginning, which is very uncharacteristic of Hulk. And it looked like throughout a lot of the match that he actually wanted to be playing in guard. And I don't know if that was a strategic decision.
I couldn't figure that out.
It seemed like he...
I think it's because I don't offhand know enough about Servio. I don't recall offhand enough about Servio's game.
Yeah, and neither do I. And I think my best guess is that it was just that he thought, okay, this guy wants to play guard, I'm going to try to play guard instead, which is always a great strategy.
And he won with it, scored.
Yeah, he scored with it. He scored on he scored on a pressure pass. Because there was a double guard pull, then they went back to standing, then they pulled guard, and Hulk did stay on top. Hulk did pull guard once other time in this match, but it's just so uncommon to see him pull guard in no-gi in particular. It caught me off. Yeah. And like it's also a little unusual to see double guard pulls in this weight class.
We've seen him do it before.
Yeah, sure.
Like he'll usually do it to have you get close and then try to like wrestle up.
Yeah.
And I was curious if that's what he was trying to do, but it looked it kind of looked like he wanted to like play guard here.
It did.
And that's what threw me off. I assumed that he was going to sort of wrestle back up with it like we've seen him do in the past.
Yeah.
But it was just curious because it's not something we see a ton from Hulk.
Yeah. I mean, in gi, we see him pull guard a lot.
Yeah.
But not as much in no-gi. But yeah, Hulk ends up passing half butterfly. It was actually a really nice job because Hulk did a cool thing. Trulio definitely wanted to maintain distance here in this match. And so when he does actually pull guard, it was clear that he wanted to keep a good distance and work some entanglements maybe or something that requires a little bit of space. And Hulk did an excellent job breaking through the barriers that were creating that space. And he does it in a way in this particular setup. He does it in a way where he's able to collect Tullio's foot into a half butterfly, but does it so that Tullio's foot his heel is up against his own butt cheek. Right. So it's essentially a useless half butterfly hook. And then he uses that to pass with the body lock, which we see him do later against Oliveira.
It's a really common like S-pass variation for the butterfly guard hook. And it's like, it's the one that is, when I play a lot of butterfly guard, it's the one that is people do most successfully to me. And it was like, as soon as that foot's in, it is so hard to lift someone, especially if they have a really good base like Hulk has. I was like, ooh, this is going to be a tough position to stop. And Hulk just slides past and he's able to get around.
Starts passing, Tullio turns to defend the pass. Hulk gets the hooks in. And that's the 4 points that wins him the match. Some takedown attempts later on, but that's about it.
Next match, we got William Tackett defeating Rousimar Palhares 9-0. I loved this match. I love Rousimar's entries when Rousimar is like willing to fight guys. We haven't seen it in a while, and I was super concerned we were going to get another like stally match from Rousimar.
Yeah, Toquinho. So I'm gonna call him Toquinho because I prefer that name. Toquinho
means tree stump, by the way, if you don't know, which is hilarious.
Makes a lot of sense.
It does.
So one of the things that I did notice about this, we talked about this on the preview last week. If Toquinho comes out looking like he did in AADC days, we will see a dominant performance. And I am sort of eating my words on that because we did see that version of him. However, it looked like his leg entry and entanglement control has not evolved a day. It looked exactly
that is exactly
like 2012 leg lock entries. There was no hip control. He was not maintaining the positions well. And the problem with leg locks back then,
was no one did them, and like if you didn't need those stuff to just rip guys' legs off.
No, I mean where I trained, we did them all the time. It was a commonplace in Ohio because it was a lot of catch wrestling guys and a lot of like Russians, and so it was common then in at least where I trained. But the approaches at that time and the control at that time, it leads to losing position. And that was actually, I think, a large part of the reason that a lot of the like fundamentalists and I think the general Brazilians get
old school Brazilian guys is what you're looking for. Yeah,
yeah. I was being nice about it, but
old school Brazilian guys didn't like leg locks because like you give up position.
You give up position, and it was true then. It was true then. You could still win with them, but if you lost the position, if you lost the sub, you lost the position.
That was a thing. Like, don't go for leg locks because you're giving up position. Like even into the early days of the DD, in the early EBIs, 2014, 2015, I remember people saying that, you give up position.
And there were people that didn't so much, right? It was,
there's always exceptions to the rule.
Dean Lister was exceptionally good at not losing position off of the leg locks. And if you go back and watch his stuff, he was doing all the things that the DDS guys sort of allowed to come to prominence, right? And so there were guys that were doing it back then, but more often than not, your leg lock winners were your guys that did a lot of leg locks, where you're like catch based approaches. And if you don't get the submission, you get your back taken, you get mounted, you get put into side control. You just lose position because your hip control isn't good enough to maintain the posture. Whereas the more modern approach allows you time to realize you're losing the sub and then to progress your position and advance your position off of a failed sub, whereas the old versions of it didn't. And all we were seeing was the old versions of this from Toquinho.
And then we'd immediately see Tackett go, cool, I put my knee here, I push down, I pressure down, I stand up from this position, I turn, I then attack. And it was like 3 or 4 separate times where you'd see Palhares enter. Tackett would either counter leg lock off of it, and I was like, ooh, that's ballsy. Like, props to you. I wouldn't have the balls to do that, but good on you, Tackett. I was just impressed. It was a ballsy move. Because it was one of those moves that, like, cool, I would not have the confidence to do that with Rousimar Palhares. It's like, we're going to leg lock shootout because why? Because it's over with he taps, it's over. If I tap, it's not necessarily over.
Yeah.
He countered 2 or 3 times with heel hooks of his own, and 2 of them, Palhares went, I got to defend now, and you saw Palhares like pushing the knee line and getting out.
Again, is what happens when you don't have good control of your opponent's hips, right? The counters are available.
Yeah. It was a really interesting match of like old school leg locks versus new school defense and like old school counters for guys. Like, look at the Alan Belcher fight and Rousimar Palhares in the UFC.
Yep.
Like, doing a lot of same things where he would go for a leg lock, Alan would turn his hips out, turn his legs out, get the knee down to the mat, and then he'd come back in and just like ground and pound.
Yep.
And it was very, very similar into the way that Tackett addressed those positions as well. And it was cool to see the new generation take someone in Palhares that's extremely dangerous, extremely savvy and veteran, but has not made the shift to a lot of the new techniques.
And that makes sense because he's been focused. We talked about this last week. He's been focused on other things. Yeah. He was very focused on MMA for a long time. He's just recently making a re-entry into some of the professional jiu-jitsu scene. And it makes sense that you wouldn't. Right, you don't need to keep up on the nuances of leg lock games for MMA.
No, if you're amazing at it, and like most MMA guys aren't good enough at it to have it really matter.
Yeah,
like,
and you can use
other stuff.
You can use that technique.
Yeah, and it's perfectly serviceable and viable and works great.
Absolutely. And so it's not that I don't think it's anything that he was doing wrong. It was interesting to see that piece of his game that he was so well known for a long time probably hasn't progressed in the way that a lot of the sport has. Probably because he's been away from this particular part of the sport for a little bit, It
was a super interesting match from like a historical look on like the style of clashes that are very similar styles, but like a modern era versus like even like 6 or 7 years ago.
Yeah.
Like when he was so dominant in those positions. So cool match. William Tackett wins that match, and then he goes on to have really not be able to continue after that. But it was cool to see him, perform that. Yep. First match of the night of the GP, we had Leandro Lo defeating Rafael Paganini 10-0. Leandro Lo's first nogi match in 5 years. Sorry, 6 years almost.
Almost 6.
Because it was Craig Jones at ADCC 2017. Essentially the match that started the show, by the way. That is essentially the match. Yeah. It was like, because everyone was like, who is this Craig Jones guy? And then I was like, hey, Josh, I think people would probably want to know who Craig Jones is because he's obviously very, very good and been winning things. He won trials and like No one knows who he is, and I can't find any information online about him. I assume he's won a bunch of other stuff. Do you want to talk about jiu-jitsu and like guys like this every week? And Josh was like, sure. And then 200 episodes later, here we are. Thanks, Craig Jones, for this match.
Here we go.
So, and then this is the first Nogi match Leandro has done since we started the podcast.
Which is such a long time.
200 episodes, essentially.
Yeah. Yeah. So he looked pretty good in it, though.
He did. Scored.
Wins.
Bunch of points. Racks up. Didn't look in danger at any point in time.
No.
It was vintage Leandro. He knocked the rust off initially a little bit at the beginning of the match. You saw like a little bit of a different start.
Well, actually, this one was pretty. It was pretty stale, and then they went to overtime, and then Lo looked fantastic. But it was a lot of like headquarters passing from Lo that didn't really go anywhere. Paganini
in overtime, he goes, "Oh, I got to scroll the points,"
right?
And then immediately,
which is classic Lo shit, right? Like Leandro Lo is very well known for like putting up a good fight, and then when it's like, "Hey, Leandro, you're gonna lose now," he goes, "Oh no, I'm not," and then he just doesn't. And so like that kind of happened here, right? It made it to overtime,
like,
and then
I was like, "Oh, this is a close decision. I'm not sure. Maybe I think I give it to Lo."
And then
and then they went to overtime, and Lo was like, "Oh, but better score a lot," and like puts up 10.
Yeah.
And I went,
"Oh,
am I stupid? Like, what was that? Just like not super close, and like you almost lost it in the initial section of the match, and then decided to score a bunch of points, and just kind of decided to do that."
Yeah.
So yeah, the beginning of the match was, I think him knocking off some of the rust of like Nogi in a like competitive setting, and then getting comfortable and going, "Oh, I get a reset and I get like 30 seconds to breathe. Cool." And then doing the
does it, yeah.
So middleweight GP, I have nothing else to really comment on the match.
Hulk looked
really
impressive all the way through. Hulk's always a top competitor.
Absolutely.
This run for him right here sets a high precedent for me looking forward. Like I'm really impressed with how he looked, and I'm excited to see how things move for him, because he's been a big name for a long time. His performances this weekend were very dominant. Yeah. Even for that level, even for the level that he had been at for a while, he was very dominant, I thought.
Super impressed. Happy to see him take this. It was a lot of fun. Overall, like really, really fun event. Let's talk about a couple of the super fights. Which one do you want to talk about?
You go first. What do you want?
Let's talk about Nicholas Meregali defeating Rider Zuchi.
First, before that, can we talk about Nicholas Meregali's hair?
We can.
What?
You heard my thoughts in the Grappling Rewind chat.
I think it was a brilliant. So for those of you who haven't watched, Nicholas Meregali came out with like stone white hair, like
I think it's called platinum, isn't it?
Platinum, yeah. It looked like he went white,
but like old guy,
white,
like old guy white hair.
Yeah, old guy white
at that length that old guys wear that have boats.
And so it was actually, I think it was a brilliantly strategic decision by him. Because I couldn't help but look at him, not like I just kept thinking that he was just a really infit 60-year-old dude.
That's what he looked like the whole time. I was like, he looks like an old guy. He looks like an old guy.
It was so hard to like detach the fact that I know that Morgalli is an incredible athlete and 24. But I was still like, what is this 60-year-old doing? And so maybe it was all a big ruse to get his opponents thrown off. And
Morgalli wins on a penalty.
It was actually a weird performance. Another thing about this, though,
it was the weirdest match that we have covered in the last 2 years. It was just like Morgalli in guard, not doing anything.
Yeah,
and then Rider on top, also not doing anything. And at the end of the match, they're like talking.
Yep.
And then Morgalli like throws up like a kind of tight armbar, weird like over the face armbar that like Rider like yanks out of, and then like
but like doesn't really yank out of. Morgalli like kind of just let it go, and then like
the whole match was weird. I have nothing to take from this match aside from it was just fucking weird.
Yeah, not Herberth Santos weird, but like
you can see it from
below.
You can see it from here.
Yeah,
it was just like.
Well, another thing that I wanted to say though with this was I'm getting to a point where I can't really predict what to do with what Morgalli is going to be doing, right? So we saw him only once, or so we saw him twice in all of 2020. One decision win and one loss.
Versus Gutenberg, and then he beat who'd he beat at the first BJJ Bet? I didn't write it down. Whatever. We saw him twice.
We only saw him once in all of 2021. So he's had 3 matches on a professional stage in the last 2 years after one of the most incredible 2019s that existed. Like he was
18. His 2018 was good. 2019 was good, but 2018 was crazy.
2018 was crazy. 2019 was really, really good though. Still too. He had wins. His win rate was like 95%, and it was against incredible jiu-jitsu players, right? And so he had 2 years that put him in talks of the best ever, right?
Weight, yeah.
And then almost no fights in the past 2 years, which 2020 did a lot of weird things to a lot of people, and so who knows what the situation was? I'm not sure, and I'm not saying that there's anything that has gone wrong. It was just a super
curious, weird performance, and I wish I had more technical analysis to bring to the show here, other than like.
Not a lot happened.
Nothing happened. Like nothing happened.
Yeah.
That was like they were talking for like stretches during the match, and I don't speak Portuguese, and like, and Sanji was like kind of talking about what they were saying. Like he didn't get what's going on. Like, I don't know what's going on. Like Howell didn't get what was going on from Flo. Like nobody knew what was going on, and the match ended, and then.
Yeah, and then
Morgalli had white hair. Moving on, next match. Tayane Porfirio defeats Gabriela Passanelli 2-0. First time we've seen Tayane in a while. Looked good, gets it done. Kind of definitely a slower paced women's heavyweight match, but does what she needs to get it done. Gets it done on a. Might have been a takedown. I don't actually remember. I remember it's a very, very slow match where she scores once, and that is the entirety of the match. Matheus Gabriel defeats Luan Carvalho via armbar. Not the black hole 50-50 armbar, but a variation of, and I love seeing 50-50 armbars. It was some slick shit.
Yeah, they're uncommon, but it was a nice match, and Matheus Gabriel's good.
Very good,
right? I mean, we know that, but
he's the current the current world champion because we didn't have one last year.
Yeah.
So 2019 still world champion. Like I cannot. Matheus Gabriel is a guy that I'm super amped. He's super young. He's super good. I love his game.
Yep.
I love the way he transitions to things like this from 50-50 to the arm lock, and then like is able to get it and like cinch it up and like finish it. And he goes for like twice. I like the way in which he plays, and I like the tactical decisions that he makes. And so I'm super excited to see him again win, and I'm excited to see what we're going to see more from him this next year.
Absolutely.
Also, Sam Nagai defeated Matheus Oneida via bow and arrow choke. Sam Nagai looked good. Took him a minute to get the choke locked in, eventually kind of cinched it up, and then was able to turn his angle and get it done.
Yeah.
Also, some really fun matches on the prelims. The first prelims match was bonkers as well. So you should go back and watch the event. I don't know how long the whole match footage is.
Yeah, always put on such a good event, though.
Yeah, they do. It's fun.
Great fights.
It was fun. I can't find
it's a good rule set.
Yeah, it's good. And they're pretty... there were a couple matches that were definitely like could have used, I think, additional like stalling incentive penalty. But overall, the matchups were really good. And I had a fun time watching the event live. They ran it at like 4 p.m. on a Sunday, which for me, honestly, wasn't terrible. I was like, about 5 o'clock I tuned in. I was like, oh, this is sweet. I can just like sit back and watch and hang out on a Sunday. It's like it's not 9 p.m. at night. Yeah, it's not like some terrible time. I actually was like, oh, this is actually like a really good time. I wish more events would run like.
I'm over 30. I wish all events started at 4.
Dude, if the UFC could end at like 10:30, like
I basically stopped watching
PM,
it because I can't stay up that late. I'm just too old. I can't do it. Like I don't watch those events.
When your main event walks out at like 12:30, I'm like, do you fucking hate me?
I've been asleep for 2 hours, yo.
Dude,
I've either been asleep for 2 hours or I'm so shit faced that I'm not going to watch it anyways. Like those are the two. If I'm up at midnight, those are the two reasons. Or those are the two situations that I'm in at midnight.
See, I go to bed at like 1 or 2, like 1 in the morning most of the time.
Nope.
So it's just like, but I want like that's me time. That's like it's like editing stuff, being angry for no reason that I'm still awake. Like that's me time. I don't want to be like watching events and taking notes at 1 a.m. I just want to be angry for no reason.
Seething.
So that does it for BJJ Bet 2. It's a lot of fun. I can't wait for the next one. On to our recap of Fight to Win 179. This one was the rematch of the bonkers match that was Josh Shishnos versus Kennedy Maciel.
Put on a show again.
Dude, another one. So if you didn't see the first match, pause the show. Actually,
go back.
Share the show with your gym, please, because that's the best way that we grow the show.
Yeah,
and really appreciate that because, I think we put on a pretty good show. Please share it out so that we can, increase the viewership and the listenership. You didn't see the first match. Pause the show, go back and watch the first match because it was fucking crazy. And in the last 10 seconds, Kennedy takes it with a rear naked choke victory.
Yeah.
In this match, starts off Kennedy comes out quick. Josh jumps for a flying guillotine. I was like, ooh,
of course,
that might be ill-advised. And then Kennedy takes him down on the single leg, immediately takes him down into a back crucifix.
Yeah.
And they sit.
They sit. But the thing with back crucifix is the crucifix in no-gi is that there are absolutely submissions you can hit from there.
What's up, Barry Yoshida? His entire game, yes.
Yeah, but they are often... So in the gi, you get the advantage of being able to lock in that choke, right? There's the crucifix choke that is very dangerous in the gi. It doesn't exist in no-gi, and there's no replacement for it in no-gi. No. And so in the gi, you have this scenario where you can sort of make someone defend a thing, and then all of the other submissions, it doesn't really matter that they're
you can switch to a crucifix choke, a zipper choke. You can switch to the front, the rear naked choke. All in the gi, you can kind of swap between them and be mucking with stuff, and the arm locks there, and eventually force the person to give you one of them.
But the fact that there's this looming threat of just the standard crucifix choke, makes all of those other things easier to hit, and it's a very dangerous position for that reason. Yes. In no-gi, because that primary choke doesn't exist, you end up in a situation where almost any attack you do is going to be telegraphed. And
because you can only do
only do so much.
Two really good attacks, and one of them is the rear naked choke. And
there's a couple nice transitions. You can
transition, but I'm saying as attacks, submission attacks from the crucifix at the higher levels, you are seeing the rear naked choke from there.
Yeah.
That's it. And so Cisneros goes, I'm in a crucifix from the back in no-gi. I need to keep my chin down and keep walking my shoulders down and be at the beginning of the match. Yeah. I have time to work here, and I'm going to keep working.
And it was smart jiu-jitsu, which is something we talked about with Cisneros before. He's one of these young guys that he attacks aggressively. I love his approach. I think he's extremely good. One of my favorite jiu-jitsu players in the game right now, but we've often said that we're a little bit concerned that he attacks too much and doesn't pace himself, and the patience hasn't built for him yet. And this was, for me, I was really, really happy to see him here because it looked like he was just okay, I can relax here, I can be patient, and I can wait for him to move to something. And then when Kennedy moved to the armbar,
and Josh kind of leaned out and he waited for Kennedy. He looked, and Kennedy made a motion like he was going to switch the leg over to go for the arm, and then Josh turns his hips down and gets up, and I went. Nice, great transition there. And the timing on it was really good because Kennedy, we know, has a really good armbar from those topside positions, and I think we saw him finish Juni with that.
Yep.
Not that same exact armbar, but again, an armbar in a similar fashion. And for Cisneros to turn his hips down and get up, and I was like, okay, cool. He's still definitely a live dog in this fight.
Yeah, it was really exciting to see the sort of combination of patience and
because it was
timing that Cisneros had there.
3+ minutes there.
Yeah, he was in there. It
was half the match almost, and I was like, ooh, he's got to.
Seems bad.
He's coming down from he's got to really make up a lot of ground in this match. Then Homeboy did.
Yeah. So then there's a scramble. And we end up with a situation where Cisneros sort of pulls a flying Kimura out. And he ends up jumps through guard in the middle of a scramble, grabs the Kimura, and Kennedy does a nice job tucking his hand into his hip, but that defense only goes so far, and Cisneros was able to sort of lock his feet up around in almost a high guard kind of situation while hitting this attack.
Yeah.
And
it's a Barato Plata, Taraco Plata variation on it, where it's how do I explain this? It's you have your front arm locked through their elbow, but you are essentially doing a Peruvian necktie on their Kimura arm.
Yeah, that's a way to put it. Yeah,
that's what it looks like. It kind of looks like a Peru because both legs are over their back.
Yeah,
and it's just a weird you can do stuff there. You can get it out, but it's really, really hard to get it out at the high levels of no-gi because people keep the elbow so tight in that you can do stuff off of there, but you're gonna have to go back to usually a high guard like Cisneros does here.
And so Kennedy eventually moves. I think it was actually Kennedy's choice. I think it was an intentional decision for him where he sort of moves out of that defensive position and starts trying to make some ground. And Cisneros is able to sort of get the arm up into a position where it looks like he might be able to start attacking to finish. But Kennedy did it on purpose and turns his chest towards Cisneros in a way and then is able to free his arm and then gets back and then ends up back into Cisneros' guard. But Cisneros, as Kennedy's entering, grabs a triangle.
Yeah.
And then he does this thing that we've seen him do before where he's switching back and forth between triangle and reverse triangle a little bit. They're on the edge of the mat. And then things kind of end there.
And I would not want to be a referee in this match.
Tough call.
And
because
then as we're going to decision, I'm like, man, this should probably go Cisneros, actually. Cause
I agree. I agree that they did go Cisneros, and I agree that it should have.
And here's why. Although Kennedy had multiple minutes of control in the back crucifix, he wasn't actually going for the choke for a lot of the time in the back crucifix. Like, he was in the back crucifix and had great control for most of it, but it wasn't like kind of Liberator Yoshida style where you get low and you're just punching them in the face repeatedly.
Punching's not allowed.
Well, you're not grinding your face and knuckles over their nose and under their chin to get there. He was establishing the position. And although Cisneros had to defend the position, he wasn't defending a submission most of the time. Versus the two things we saw from Cisneros that were the biggest moments of the match were that Barato Plata, Taraco Plata variation that Kennedy had to defend for a good portion, and that finishing sequence triangle that he sits in for 30 seconds a minute.
And Kennedy was definitely defending them.
Yeah, and they were submission defense as opposed to positional defense. So I went, okay, in my eyes, for fight to win, that should kind of clearly give this to Cisneros. It goes Cisneros, and I went, I still know how to read a decision.
It was a good match, though.
It was a great match.
A lot of action, a lot of really nice jiu-jitsu from both of them. Cisneros pulls it off with a couple very solid submission attempts at the end there.
This is definitely a match that, again, we are going to see. These are both two young black belts at the weight, featherweight, lightweight. We are going to see them compete for years to come, and I am about it.
Yeah,
because both times they've put on fantastic matches, great main event for it.
Yeah, there are some like rivalries that you see once or twice, and you're like, these guys are gonna keep going at it, and I'm just over it. I can watch these two fight another 10 times, and I will be just as happy as I am.
I feel like they'll both give us something different every time, and they'll approach the match in a different way. And
they both just have exciting jiu-jitsu that plays off of one another really well.
They both will also take risks, which I do like. They both maybe make some decisions that I was like, oh, that's been ill-advised, but I'm down to watch it. Because they have the utmost confidence in themselves and in their game. And I appreciate that from the athletes that we cover and the jiu-jitsu that I enjoy watching. Both these guys bring it. Great match.
Love it.
Cisneros is now the champ, takes the belt from Kennedy for 145. And very, very curious to see who his first defense will be against at 145. There's a list of names that I would be. Basically, anyone at 45, I'm
just down to watch Cisneros.
I'm down to watch Cisneros defend that belt. I'm excited. He has the title. It's always going to be a long match now. He just gives him the time to work. He's got that gas to work the whole time. It should be fun. I know we're going to see it run back soon. Next match I want to talk about is Heather Rafferty defeating Tracy Goodell via inside heel hook. This is a really quick match. Where Tracy comes out super quick at the beginning, throws up, was it a triangle?
There was a triangle attempt right away.
Yep, and then Heather is able to essentially defend out of the triangle, go down immediately onto the legs and into a knee bar variation. Goodell starts gripping up super high at the neck, and I went, really curious to see.
Because the knee bar wasn't deep enough where you would want to be attacking the neck yet. It was a shallow enough knee bar at that point.
It was also a little bit to the side too. Where she was trying to stop the rotation of the hips down for Rafferty. And I went, okay, I see where you're going with this. I'm curious as to why she's trying to keep that space. Is she going to try to counter off for her own attacks? And then Rafferty does a really good job of popping her hips back up into the center line, pushing Goodell over a little bit, and then coming back down and starting to dig. Instead of digging for the knee bar, starts digging for the heel hook. And you see her dig, and I was like, ooh, that's you've defended the neck now, and it's super hard to defend the heel hook in this position if you're on the neck, because now you're sitting. And you actually, to defend this kind of heel hook on the outside like that, you have to stand up and turn, or you have to get your knee down, but because you're sitting, that knee is essentially blocked by your own hips because you're sitting. And then Rafferty does a really good job, digs for it again in the second time, and is able to pull it out. And I get it. The whole match, I think, is 3.5 minutes.
Really nice finish,
if
though.
That. Yeah, really great finish. And also, really great come from behind immediately because Rafferty spent some time in that triangle and it was deep. And I thought Goodell was going to pull out the armbar like immediately in the match. So to come back off that into the legs and then have the back and forth sequence, it was just it was a really fun back and forth match that was very quick. Gabi McComb defeats Karen Atunez via decision. McComb looked good here, solid the entire time.
Yeah, McComb looked good. McComb had a couple. She played a really nice guard. She had a couple sweep attempts, and then had sort of a straight ankle lock attempt that came off of the single leg X. It was a legitimate ankle lock attempt. And Atunez clearly had to defend. It wasn't anything that I thought was like, oh, this is deep, this is in, it's gonna end. But it was a clearly defended submission attempt. Then Atunez is able to like recover after that defense and then gets to top and has a really, really nice pass. Like we don't see people pass on Gabi like this. It was really excellent display of jiu-jitsu.
She just stepped through over the single leg X with a low.
She did that like floating leg kick over and then settled down. It was a counter to Gabi's elevator sweep.
Yeah.
And it's just not something that you see happen to Gabi, right? She's got an incredible guard, and you don't see people that are able to pass at all, but especially in a situation where, like, Gabi had generated a little momentum, and then Atunez is able to pass, but then she settles into side control and doesn't really do anything with it. She plays a beautiful side control. She tries to move to knee right a little bit, but never mounts any real submission offense. And I think in many other rule sets, Atunez wins this fight. And even if you're looking at it just from like a who had the momentum most and who like generated the most sway in the match, I think Atunez wins it, but that's not what we're looking at. It's a fight to win rule set where submission attempts account for more than anything else.
And that time that McComb had the leg and she hit a really nice low X guard, like single leg X variation sweep that I thought was really cool. She had the ankle low instead of having the X guard on the top of the shoulder. She had it low hooked up.
I see this a lot more and more lately. When I'm not injured, I play this version of the X a lot.
And she just tracked the outside leg, the long leg of Atunez, and just kicked her over while she went to go for the step and came up. And I just thought it was a really nice like counter to a long step from the X guard that we saw from McComb. But she just spent more time attacking that bottom leg for the majority of the match, and Atunez had to continue to defend it, although she's able to pass off with that beautiful elevator pass at the end.
I was about halfway through.
It's right at the end. Sorry, that was her biggest piece of offense.
Yeah, it was her biggest piece of offense. I thought the positional dominance was really impressive from Atunez, and if I were scoring the match based on like my personal preference and say like, which is obviously a stupid way to do things, right? But like if I was looking at the match and saying, okay, I think that this person played better jiu-jitsu today, I give it to Atunez. But that's not what it is. It's not who does Zak think did better jiu-jitsu. It's who put up to win rules.
Who put up more offense, submission offense.
Gabi definitely did that, and she gets the win for it. A good win for her, and clearly played the rules. But I thought it was a really impressive performance from Atunez too, especially against someone like Gabi, who's been so dominant for a while now.
Yeah, it was a fun match. I'm happy that we had a lot of ladies on the upper end of the card. Also on the card, Jamie Canuto defeated Jefferson Gusari via decision. Back and forth gi match. It was very much on the feet for the majority of the match.
Yep.
So that does it for our recap of anything else. Any other matches you want to cover?
That's it.
Fight to Win. That's it for our recap of Fight to Win 179. The results are up on Flow. All the videos are up on Flow. Go back and watch Cisneros versus Kennedy.
Yeah, man, that's going to be a rivalry to watch forever.
Yeah, it's a fun.
I'm excited about that.
It's a fun match.
I'm excited to think and talk about that rivalry in like 7 years.
When we're really old and they're like established black belts now and they're beating the up-and-comers.
I'm just fucking dead.
I'm excited about it. So next, you want to start? Where do you want to go next? Want to go to Fight to Win?
Yeah, sure.
Let's move on to our preview of we got previews for Fight to Win, Emerald City, and Polaris Squads. So let's do Fight to Win first. We got 2 matches on this card. We have Rafa every time. Rafael Lovato Jr., not Rafael.
It's hard.
Versus Gabriel.
Everyone whose name begins with an R, it's a ha. Yeah. He's the one.
Except for Hana Yaya. It's Rana Yaya, actually.
Oh.
Yeah. We have Lovato taking on Gabriel Argis. I don't know how to call this one. I would give a lean towards Argis. Younger.
Yeah.
He's looked really good recently. We haven't seen him on the main stage in a minute here.
Yeah. And Lovato, has been progressively, since he's returned to competitive professional jiu-jitsu from MMA, he has looked progressively more like the Lovato that is one of the best jiu-jitsu players that's ever existed. Not that when he came back he looked bad, but there was just clear, it was the same.
He'd been gone for
he'd been gone for years, right? And he focused on MMA for a long time and then come back. And honestly, it was impressive how good he was when he did come back initially. Yeah. And he's only gotten better, and he's regaining a lot of I think he's building a new skill set to deal with more modern jiu-jitsu in a very quick way. So that said, it's getting hard for me to pick against Lovato.
I don't want to pick against Lovato, but I'm one of those like sadness picks. That's kind of what I was like. I think Arja could take it. Like Lovato very much could take this. This for me, it's not a coin flip match. It's just how does Lovato approach Arjas?
Yeah.
And then how does Arjas approach Lovato? It's this weird, like, it's a dichotomy of style where it's like, I don't really know. They both have a variety of ways that they can interact with it. I have no idea on the night what they will pick, unfortunately. And so that's like, for me, it's a complete toss-up pick. I picked Arjas because I'm sad when Lovato loses.
It's hard to pick Lovato matches right now until we see a little bit more of his progression and how he looks in on the professional jiu-jitsu stage again,
Next match we have Rafael Paganini versus Kendall Riesling for an open weight women's title match.
Yep.
I kind of want to go Getty.
Geddes is giving up some weight here, but I'm going to go Geddes. I think Geddes has looked progressively more and more impressive. And Kendall's been looking better lately, but she's always such a...
She's up and down a little bit.
She's hot and cold. Very hot and cold.
Geddes has been
when
hot.
She shows up, and when Kendall shows up, she looks incredible. Her wrestling is above and beyond the quality of wrestling that we see from almost any other woman in the sport. And
she has a judo and wrestling background.
And when she shows up and does that, she looks great. She is also known for just kind of showing up and looking a little bit off. And so, I mean, it's hard to pick against someone like Geddes who's just been on 100% of the time for the past year and a half.
I think she's had that one match she dropped that was like, that was a close match.
Yeah, but it wasn't. She didn't look bad.
No.
She just lost.
I'm going to pick Geddes because I look at the Elizabeth Clay match and how she approached the challenges that Elizabeth Clay presented, and then contrast to her baby Vieira match, and like the two different ways that she handled both of those matches. And there's another match that happened right before the Clay match, and like she has the ability to do what we're talking about Hulk can do and modulate her style. Yeah, and like I approach the match this way, and I think she's going to come in Atos camp having planned specifically for the challenges that Kendall brings, the weight that she is giving up. We've seen her deal with a heavy player before. Yeah. Kendall really likes to play on top. I think that Geddes will be able to put the match into a place where that is less of a factor, and she will try to basically avoid ever being on the bottom where Kendall can really slow you down, get on top, pressure you.
Yeah.
And
honestly, I don't think she avoids getting on. I don't think she's able to avoid getting on the bottom with Kendall, but I think that Geddes' bottom game is just going to outpace. I think on the feet, Kendall is going to be able to get Geddes where she wants her.
And that's the thing I actually don't know about. I'm very curious to see if
it'll be interesting
how Geddes' wrestling matches up, because Kendall likes to kind of tie with you and work off the top.
But Kendall's also had trouble on top. Right? Yeah. When we see her get into a lot of trouble, it's because the person plays a really slick bottom game.
Which is a lot of the women at the bigger weight classes, they play a crazy good bottom game.
Yeah, and so that's where I see things going. I have to pick Geddes, but I think it's going to come from her
submission offense on the bottom?
Yeah.
I see that as Geddes like playing a really, really measured positional game, and then...
Well, we'll see.
We'll see. So we're picking Geddes for different reasons, which is very interesting. That's all the matches I have right now for Fight to Win. Those are two banger matches. Very excited for both of those. Look out for that. That's on August 6th. Moving on, you want to do Emerald City or Polaris first?
Emerald City.
Emerald City Invitational, August 7th. We have a awesome 16-man EBI style 145 bracket. Here are the names.
Killer names in here.
We got Josh Cisneros, John Calistine, Frank Rosenthal, Luis Quijones. You look up the bracket while I read the names, because I don't want you to read the names, because I don't have the bracket offhand. I think we have a bracket now.
Okay.
So no pressure, Zach. Just quickly pull it up while I go through the
2 seconds, no problem.
Gabriel Souza. And Gabriel Souza actually just won Midwest Finishers, which is why he got that spot onto Emerald City, which is awesome. Richard Alarcon, Keith Krikorian, who just him and the entire Studio 84 team took home like 6 Naga belts yesterday.
Yeah,
which is just funny. Like a bunch of guys. I was like, I want to win a Naga belt. I was like, I also want to fight Krikorian for a Naga belt. Like, that's not fair.
That seems off.
We have Gianni Grippo. We have Cameron Merlot. We have Daniel Souther. We have Diego Pato Oliveira. We have John Battle. We have Esteban Martinez. We have Kennedy Maciel. We have Damian Anderson. And we have the winner of the finishers. I actually don't have the winner, the finishers winner here. That's annoying. Did you find it yet?
Nope. I'm on their website, but I'm not seeing it on the website. Maybe their Instagram.
Here it is. Here's the bracket.
Okay.
So, on the A side of the bracket.
I got it.
You got it now?
Yeah.
All right. A side of the bracket, we have Kennedy and Jeff Mock. In our first match, we have Luis Quijones versus Esteban Martinez. Second match, we have Josh Cisneros versus Cameron Merlot. And we have Frank Thosenfall versus David Wentrab. I think we are going to see this side of the bracket. We're going to see the rematch we talked about, Kennedy versus Josh exciting. On that side.
I think so.
I think that is a very, very reasonable that side of the bracket.
Yep.
Other side of the bracket, we have Gianni Grippo versus Elias Anderson. We have Keith Krikorian versus Sadram Budra. We have Gabriel Souza versus John Battle. We have Damon Anderson versus Richard Alarcon. Both these sides of the bracket, they're a very few toss-ups.
This is a nicely organized bracket. Krikorian it's EBI rules, so Krikorian is always a strong choice.
Mm-hmm. He's got so much experience. He's been on EBI back when EBI was like the real
good at
EBI.
This rule set.
Yeah, they
he
train
is
it.
Good at this rule set. Mm-hmm. Grippo looked good the past couple times we've seen him.
We did. We also did see him get subbed in the gi, but this is a no-gi match. True. We haven't seen him get subbed in no-gi in a while.
And Gabriel Souza is always a nice choice. In a situation like this, depends on who shows up.
Who are you picking on this side of the bracket?
Probably Krikorian's. Probably, I think he's the safest choice for me.
Yeah, I kind of do want to go just because the EBI experience will play so well.
Yeah, I think so.
Alarcon could definitely be a factor.
Yeah, absolutely.
On this, actually, all these guys could be a factor. This entire side of the bracket, everyone has an extreme puncher's chance.
Yeah, in under the EBI rule set, and under the EBI rule set, I think any single one of these guys could pull through.
Yeah, that's actually a really good point. I didn't think about that because with the overtimes and how they're structured for EBI, you get through the regulation, you still have to, you still have to get through.
Still got to do it.
Escapes.
So yeah, exciting. I don't think that we've seen Cisneros in an EBI. I
don't think we've seen Kennedy one either.
I don't think we've seen Kennedy in EBI either.
So that's my biggest kind of X factor there is like a guy like Frank that's super familiar with those rules and done even like Luis Quijones has done actually Esteban Martinez, all these guys have done a bunch of these EBI style events. I don't know if Kennedy and Josh have actually but
at the same time their jiu-jitsu is incredible, and probably out of this group I would rank them the top two.
Well, they're the highest ranked in top two in the world.
Yeah,
they're 2 or 3 highest ranked guys in the world,
and so
at the weight.
It'll be interesting to see how well they do under the EBI rules.
If they even put to it. I think Cisneros has a style that potentially is not going to go to overtime.
Yeah, it might not matter.
Yeah.
And if it does go to overtime, he's also got a style that probably finishes in overtime. Right. We don't see Cisneros get into submission positions and not chain it into something else.
And Kennedy's the same way. That choke from the back he has is just monster. Saw it at ADCC. Just his squeeze is unworldly for the weight class. So I definitely want to favor one of those two guys to take it. I think Cisneros has a better style for this, but I think Kennedy can. We've seen Kennedy play a slower, more tactical game, and I think he'll be forced to do that in this. That's kind of why I would lean Kennedy, although he doesn't have all the EBI experience.
Yeah.
I don't know if
it'll be
how much it will matter.
The rules play a big part in this particular tournament here. So
this is a super fun. Damien Anderson's in here. He could run away with it. There's all
a lot of these guys.
I don't want to put other guys down in it. There are so many people that this is a great bracket.
Yeah, it's a great
10
bracket.
grand, either side of this bracket wins, or somebody wins, I could see it.
Yeah.
So that's super exciting. So that is Emerald City Invitational. I'm going to pick Kennedy just based on his performance this weekend. And the back control he had on Cisneros, based on that alone, is essentially like you've been
I'm
on the back.
Cisneros because
you've been on the back.
He's getting to be my favorite jiu-jitsu player.
You've been on the back more recently. Like I'm going to give it to you. He also has a rear naked choke victory over Cisneros.
Yeah,
and so that's kind of like
sure.
That is my entire reasoning as their first match.
It's not bad reasoning.
It's not great reasoning. It's like I'm grasping at straws in a very big way there.
It's not terrible.
So that should be a super fun bracket. I'm really looking forward to that. May end up going up there. I got to figure out what this weekend what this weekend actually entails for me. A bunch of other super fights on the card. I think there was one other super fight I wanted to talk about, and let's see if I can find it. Let me stall for time here, Zach.
Yeah, I didn't check. I didn't get the super fights, or I didn't see the super fights, so I'm not sure. I can't help at all. I can continue talking to stall, but maybe we should just move.
Oh, yeah, we have Jacob Rodriguez versus Savion Marinon.
Oh, okay,
that should be. That's Nicholas Meregali's brother. Just won again the Naga belt, and then Savion, we've been following for years. Was a former a blue belt and purple belt title holder at Third Coast. It's just like
puts on interesting. Yeah, it's a interesting prospect match.
Yeah. It should be. It should be super, super fun.
Cool.
So moving on, let's talk about Polaris 3 squads. Really excited for it. I don't have much to talk about. We have Nastista Silva replacing Freddie Vosgrove versus Kyle Baim. Because Freddie Vosgrove got injured, which sucks. I'm a big fan of watching Freddie. Always comes out in the red singlet, and I find it hilarious because then he can he just heel hooks you, and it's just like that doesn't make any sense. The guy's gonna pull guard and heel hook you. He also has really improved his wrestling recently. So
sometimes you just gotta rock a singlet.
Hope he heals up. Natasa won the Polaris qualifier. A year or 2 years ago, we won one of the big qualifiers they had. So he's been featured on Polaris a couple times now. It's awesome to see him.
Yeah.
Team UK and Ireland. We have Darragh O'Connor, we have Ross Nichols, we have Daniel Strauss, we have Jed Hugh, we have Bradley Hill, we have Tom Halpin, Karen Davern, and Ben Dyson. On Team USA, we have Mike Perez, Roberto Jimenez, Richie Martinez, Nick Ronan, Nathan Orchard, William Tackett, Gio Martinez, and Adam Benegue. Do not think William's going to make it. I'm curious to see who they will replace William with at that weight.
Big name on this on that side of the bracket, or on that side of the teams.
So this actually became a lot closer now that JT's out and that Tackett's out.
Yep.
Like I thought before, I was like, ooh, it's really, it's a really tough ask for Team UK and Ireland. With those two guys out, again, you still have the guys you still have both Martinez's who are notoriously super hard. I mean, Gio is one of the hardest people to sub in jiu-jitsu.
Yeah.
Nogi, he just absurdly durable. You have Roberto Jimenez, who's going to play really well to the rule set, takes the back, scores the points, gets on. The Polaris squad is a super interesting style of event. It's sort of quintet styled.
Yep.
I like how it runs. The rules are written up online. You should read them before you watch the event because it'll make more sense. This has been the third they run. I've really enjoyed both of them.
They're interesting events. It's a nice structure. And the teams are always fairly well matched. And I think with Tackett out, this actually becomes an even more fairly well matched.
I think Cade's out, JT's out, Najmi's out. It should be a really, 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 really interesting event. I'm very excited. The last one was fun. It's finally, we were going to get this event, I think, almost 2 years ago. Yeah. This was announced because they were going to do U.S. back, I think, in June of last year, of 2020.
Yeah.
It's a full year or so.
That sounds right. It's all a blur at this point.
It is definitely a blur. So that's August 7th. It should be great. I think that does it for previews this week. Overall, should be a really fun week of show. What do you got going on this weekend? Anything fun?
No.
Being injured?
So. Yeah, being injured. I'm so fucking frustrated. I mean, I can't really speak to you about it, who's had a broken back for fucking ever, but...
I think only 4 years. I've only been injured the entirety of the belt I've been at.
Only 4 years.
Only 4 years straight with 2 knees and a back and a sternum. Great.
My LCL are fucking garbage at this point. I've strained... torn, who the fuck knows.
Yep.
Every doctor that I talk to is like, yeah, you can go get an MRI, but surgery is not going to be any better than anything else unless it's really fucked up for the next 6 months, but it'll probably heal by then. So I've strained / torn them countless times at this point. Both knees, I can't. And I used to, when I was 20, I remember being really being the guy that I had shoulder surgeries already, but my knees are great. And then I in my head, my knees are still great. Like, I still think like I'm the guy who has fine knees, and I just don't fucking have fine anything anymore. Like, all of my body is destroyed.
What's up, combat sports? Get at me.
Yeah, combat sports fucking suck.
They're super fun, but like,
yeah,
we're not going to get old good. I'm already I'm 30 and I can't like sit in a chair without pain.
Also, like, I bounce between 230 and 250 for my life. Like, my body size, my knees are just going to be shot. Well, what the fuck I do?
You're 100 pounds heavier than me. Jesus.
Yeah.
Went to the doctor today to look at a mass on my neck. That was fun.
The fuck?
Yeah, it's probably not cancer. I really hope this show isn't like in 6 months. It's like, yeah, man, it's going to chemo. I really hope there's not a soundbite cut there.
I bet that you don't miss a show, even if that is the case.
Probably not.
You psychopath.
Yeah. So here's the 200. So that's all I got this week. We got some fun stuff that happened this weekend, but other than that, should be some good jiu-jitsu, and see you guys next week. As always, I'm your host, Maine, my co-host,
Zach.
And we are the Grappling Rewind. To see you on the mat whenever that is. Stay safe. If you like the show, please consider sharing it on Facebook with the folks at your gym. It's the best way that we grow the show, and we really appreciate it. You can reach out to us on email.
We also have Instagram. We have Facebook. We have Twitter. We have Google+.
Until that shuts down.
We have a website.
If you have an event you would like to have us cover, please let us know. If you have a name, like most people do, and you'd like to have us stop butchering it,
let us know.
Reach out to us. The show is also available on YouTube, Spotify, in addition to iTunes and every other podcast service. We very much appreciate your time, and thank you.